realized as soon as I got up here that it had been too long since I've been here because I forgot to put the microphone on, so sorry. So November is a wonderful month in the church. This one is starting off quite well. We begin it with November 1st, as we begin all months with the first of the month. But November 1st is special because it's All Saints' Day. Right? We start off that month of November remembering those holy men and women who have gone before us, who've run the race and who have finished the race, right? And in his writing for the Office of Readings on that celebration, St. Bernard writes this. He says, "The saints have no need of honor from us, neither does our devotion add the slightest thing to what is theirs. Clearly, if we venerate their memory, it serves us, not them. But I tell you, when I think of them, I find myself inflamed by a tremendous yearning." When St. Bernard thinks of the saints and thinks of their lives, he's inspired by them, right? And they should inspire us too, to strive for holiness, to live a good life, to get where they are, right? To attain heaven. And this is related to what we hear in the first reading today. St. Paul is writing to the Romans, and he writes this, which could seem a little bold, but St. Paul was not short on bold things. He says, "For I will not dare to speak of anything except that what Christ has accomplished through me, to lead the Gentiles to obedience by word and deed." And St. Paul is not afraid to talk about the great things that he has done, which may seem a little wrong, right? We shouldn't boast about what we do. But he knows that he's not speaking about the things he's done for his own sake. Right? That's the difference. He's speaking about the things that he's done, but more so he's speaking about the things that Christ has accomplished through him. Right? He's not saying, "I'm Paul, and I've done this and this and this." He's saying, "I'm Paul, and look what Christ has done through me. Right? Look what Christ was able to achieve because I allowed him to work in me." And he tells of these great things to the Romans to inspire them. Right? Just as the saints inspire us, he was trying to inspire those men and women of his age to do the same as him. And so the real reason for my visit, of course I love you and I love being here, but it's National Vocations Awareness Week. And so I asked Father Sibley if I could come, and he said yes, and he's not even here, so it's wonderful. I don't even have to see him. I get to see who I want to. But this theme carries over into this whole Vocations Awareness Week. There's this wonderful new wedding prep program called Witness to Love, which you might have heard about. And so the whole way this is structured is that the couple that is going to be married gets a mentor couple, right? They choose a couple that they look up to as a good, holy married couple. Right, a couple that's been practicing the faith, a couple that goes to Mass, that's been married for at least, I think, 5 or 10 years. I should know this by now. But a couple that they can look up to, that they can be inspired by to live the marriage that they know that they're called to live. And so that they can give them these practical pointers as well. Right? And it's good for both couples. It's good for the couple that is going to be married because they're inspired, obviously, by this couple that's living a good marriage. And it's good for the couple that is being the mentor, right? Because they're reminded of what's really important, and they're reminded of the fact that other people look up to them, and that they ought to be doing the right thing, right? Because it's good, and because other people look up to them. And although it's not a formal program, the same goes for the priesthood and the religious life, right? Recent years, we've seen an increase in the number of vocations to the priesthood and the religious life. And a lot of these are what we call John Paul II vocations, right? Because of the incredible life that Pope John Paul II lived, people, young men and women, were inspired to give up their lives for the sake of Christ and his church. Right? And so we saw this increase in vocations. And for me personally, I kind of missed the John Paul II boat. I was being a heathen. But I got on the Benedict XVI boat, right? So I went to Rome right after, not long after John Paul II died, And I remember being at his tomb and watching some friends of mine just weep at his tomb. And I felt like I was missing out, or that I had missed out, because I didn't have that attachment to him. I didn't have that relationship with him. And so I said to myself, I said, "Self, you need to get to know this new pope." And it was 6 months after Pope Benedict was elected. And so I started reading all kinds of things that Pope Benedict wrote, listening to his homilies and all these wonderful things that he was saying. And he inspired me. So I would say that I'm a Pope Benedict XVI Pope, if that's, not Pope, sorry, priest. I don't want to be Pope. I'm a Benedict XVI priest. He inspired me to say yes, right? His great humility in accepting being Pope, because he didn't want it. He wanted to go retire and just do his academic thing. But he took this incredible cross upon himself for the good of the church, and he inspired others by doing it. And I think this is also evident a little closer to home, right? We can see people, priests in our midst, speaking of the great things that God has accomplished through them. I want to give you one example of that here. Not here, but locally. So, a priest passed away this summer that you probably heard of, Monsignor Mouton. So he was living at the cathedral, helping out, and he passed away quite unexpectedly. But he was an amazing priest, incredibly faithful, probably the most disciplined person I've ever met in my life. I mean, he was up at the same time every day, in the chapel the same time every day. This blew my mind. So he checked his mail at the same time every day and wrote his little thank you notes or whatever kind of response he had to give. And I saw him in the office later one day, and they had a note in his box. And so I was trying to be nice. I said, "Oh, Monsignor, you have a letter." He said, "I'll get it tomorrow." He was so disciplined, right? Because there was a time for everything. And that faithfulness to his vocation, faithfulness to prayer, his wonderful homilies, and his holiness inspired a bunch of men to enter the seminary. St. Pius has, I think, 100 seminarians right now. Probably like 5 or 7, but close. And it's because of it's obviously the work of God, but because Monsignor was so faithful and open to the working of the Lord, so many men were inspired by that to go to the seminary, to see if God was calling them. I remember I had lunch with him one day before I decided to go because I was being a baby, and he looks at me and says, "Mr. Broussard, just go. They're not going to ordain you tomorrow." And in a weird way, that was very comforting, right? Just go. Just do it. And because he was holy, I was able to listen to that and to do it. And so our call today is to follow St. Paul, right? To not be afraid, not daring to speak of anything except what Christ has accomplished in us. This doesn't mean that we go around, right, putting everything on Facebook that we do good, right? "Oh, I just made an A on my test. Oh, I made this person convert. Oh, that's not what I'm talking about. It doesn't mean that we go around campus and stop someone, right, and tell them, "Hey, I just did this great thing." Don't do that. They'll probably hit you. But it does mean that when the opportunity arises and presents itself to speak up about the great things going on in our lives, the great things that God is doing in our lives, that we do that we take that opportunity. Tell people of the good things that Christ is doing. And if we continue to follow Christ faithfully and to do this, he is going to accomplish great things in us. And more, we are going to become those saints of today who, when people hear about the great things that Christ is doing, they are inflamed with a tremendous yearning to follow God themselves.